I think we'll go ahead and get started. Again, reminder to mute your phone or your audio and switch off your video. That will save bandwidth. We've got about 70 people on the call right now. And I am hearing a little bit of feedback. So if your phone is not muted, please mute. That sounds better. All right. My name is Sharice Knotts. I am the SAME Rhein-Main Post President, and I'm very happy that you're here today. Please, if you have questions for our presenters, type them into the chat box. Our moderator will be checking those, and we will get to as many as we can. Again, a reminder to mute your phone and switch off your video. Is Colonel Dagan on the line?
Okay. You know,
hey, Sharice, go ahead, sir.
Hi. Yeah, this is John Benson. Is this? Yeah, John Adams. You might have better information. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, Colonel Dagan took command of the district yesterday, and today he is in processing out at Clay Concern, so he may or may not have the time to dial in. But hey, on behalf of the district, I really appreciate all the work that went into this collaborative effort. It's an important change in how we do business with A&Es, and obviously we need A&Es to support delivering the program, the complex program here in Europe. So again, thanks for everyone's time this morning. I'm sure this is going to be a very productive and informative session. Back over to you, Carice.
Thank you, John. Thank you very much. All right, I would like to turn it over to Margaret Burcham, who is our Vice President of Programs for the Rhein-Main Post, and she will introduce our presenters.
So good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I am really thrilled to be able to bring USACE Europe District to the Post meeting today to discuss what's really an important topic for so many people, and I know that's why we've got such a great audience out there. And we're going to have two speakers today. Our host and facilitator is Mr. John Benson, and John is newly promoted into the job as the Chief of Engineering Branch at Europe District. So congratulations, John. And I'll tell you his background. John is a registered professional civil engineer in Kansas. He has a bachelor's and a master's in civil engineering from Oklahoma State University. He has 18 years of experience as a geotechnical and materials engineer, and also as a project and program manager at the Corps of Engineers Kansas City District, his home district. And John enjoys spending time with his family of five, who he's brought with him to Europe, and they enjoy seeing Europe. And John has a goal of replicating the Kansas City barbecue industry in Wiesbaden. So John will be facilitating the question and answer period. And John has supporting him today, Marcus Olheiser. Marcus has been a member of the engineering branch at Europe District as well, and is now serving as the acting chief of AE design management, cost estimating, and value engineering as John has moved up. Marcus is a professional engineer in Alabama and has been serving with USACE since 2010. Prior to coming to Europe, Marcus served a year in the Japan district, and prior to that, spent 6 years from 2010 to 16 with the Portland District Hydroelectric Design Center. So, and an interesting fact about Marcus is that he makes his own furniture, primarily using just hand tools. So he's got another special skill we have. With all that, I'm going to welcome Marcus to give our initial presentation, and then John will facilitate the Q&A. So over to Marcus.
Thank you, Margaret. Let me see if
Marcus,
this share.
I will stop sharing my screen, and you should be able to share yours now.
Everyone see that?
Yes, we can.
Yes, thank you.
Sure can.
Excellent. So before I get started, I want to thank both Therese and Margaret for making this event possible. You know, you guys have both done an amazing job listening feedback for us, which we hadn't even thought of, coordinating the event and overcoming all the logistical had due to coronavirus. I'm confident in saying that without your guys' help, this would not have been made possible. I also wanted to thank the AE community briefly for taking the time to respond to the survey that they sent out. We received over 15 pages of comments, and I want to let you know that we are putting this valuable data to good use. It's not only guided the content of this presentation, but many of the comments have showed us where we are lacking in our processes, and they have actually had a direct impact on the process improvements. So thank you. I put together a brief presentation to primarily illustrate the why and the how of this new TORN process, which will hopefully answer a lot of the questions that we received or the comments. It is my goal to presentation in less than 30 minutes, leaving about 30 minutes for question and answers at the end. I did do a dry run of this and it around 30 minutes. So considering that I'm nervous and will forget to say things and talk way too fast, we should be done in 20 minutes. So with that, let's get started. One of the biggest questions that we received was, why are we doing this? What's the requirement? And the requirement is the Director's Policy Memorandum, DPM 2020-02. It was given to us in about, I think, 6 March of this year, and it was a requirement that came down from headquarters. It specifically says the directive is being issued for compliance with the Brooks Act and FAR requirements. Now, many of you guys may be asking, what changed? And the answer is nothing. It was a reinterpretation of the FAR requirements in the Brooks Act, which now we have to follow all those at the IDC level or at the task order level instead of just at the IDC. The directive is applicable to all headquarters USACE elements, divisions, districts, that's us, centers, laboratories, field operating activities, basically for all AE Brooks Act selections under IDCs. So a lot of questions come in saying, can we circumvent this? Do we have to do this for everything? The answer is yes, we have to do this for everything. We cannot circumnavigate it. The only way we can is if we do a sole source selection, which is also stipulated in the FAR. So the document is quite long. I think it's 5 pages long. It has a lot in it, and that's kind of why we gave it to you guys. We wanted to read it through at your leisure and have it for reference. However, there's some highlights I wanted to point out in the presentation. First, it's the contracting officer that must notify all the firms within the MATOC pool of the task order requirement. And we'll get to later how we determine the MATOC pool. We have to submit a TORN, include a summary of the scope of work, selection criteria, and a request for supplemental information tailored to the specific task order requirement. We have to convene a board, and the chairperson and any board members have to meet the same qualifications that's stated in paragraph 3-6B of the EP, which is just the same as if we were IDC source selection board. Using the selection criteria in the TORN, the evaluate SF330s on file and the responses to the TORNs, the task order questionnaire, to determine the 3 most highly qualified firms for the specific task order requirement. You'll notice there's a rule of 3 that's being enacted now at this task order level. Following the evaluation, the selection board prepares a selection memorandum, otherwise known as a board report, recommending in order of preference 3 firms that are considered the most highly qualified. And the task order selection authority, the selection decision shall be designated in accordance with AFARs. In IDC, selection approval has to go all the way to the commander. For our task orders, depending on the dollar value, it either resides with my position, the ECEC section chief, or with John's position as the branch chief. Also, all firms who were sent to TORN will be notified upon a selection decision. Unsuccessful officers for task orders greater than 5.5 mil will be given an opportunity for a debriefing in accordance with the EP. Everything else, debriefings are not required, right? However, they will be provided upon request. So if you guys ask for a debriefing on a SAP procedure, we will be mandated to give you a debriefing. I will say there's not going to be much there, and the debriefing is going to be very short. So that brings us to what is the process that NAU has spent the last few months developing to meet these requirements. When we get a draft scope of work, a workable scope of work into our office, the first thing we do is we determine the eligible AE contracts via the pool selection memorandum. The pool selection memorandum looks at the type of work and the location. Based on the ability for the different contracts to do that, selects which contracts are eligible for the work. So if it is the design of a runway in Germany, it's going to look and find all of the eligible design contracts that have Germany in the AOR. The firms are only removed for 3 reasons. Number 1, we have sufficient number of older contracts available that meet competition requirements. Per our selection acquisition strategies, we use all our older contracts before we use the new ones if possible. Number 2, there's insufficient capacity to perform the work, right? If the contract is running low on capacity, it's below the 10% threshold reserved for qualifications, then we no longer are awarding new contracts to it. And finally, which this one rarely comes up, the base contract expires prior to the deadline to exercise the severable service options. It was provided, guys. Another thing you can look through and see exactly what we're looking at when we're trying to determine. Once that's complete or in combination with that, NAU also develops the TORN using the template you see and that was provided to you guys. It has a description of work pulled from the draft scope of work under development. It has a questionnaire that's standardized. I will say that those questions can change for special case projects, and they have in the past. It includes a due date on it, which is typically 5 business days away, and a maximum page count. It has been historically 5 pages. As of today, we are reducing that to 2 pages, and it could flow. For big projects that are complex, we might increase it to 5. For very, very simple projects, we might reduce it to 1. Typical standard will be just to do 2. We've received comments about the 5 business days. Something we are factoring into setting a deadline is German and US holidays. So we are trying to. Once we have those, we send up the documents to contracting, and contracting sends out firms as determined by the signed pool selection memo. The firms then have business days or whatever it is to respond to the prayer. Now, a firm does not need to actually provide a TORN response. This is due to provide supplemental project-specific information for consideration. It specifically states in the TORN, if you do not submit the requested supplemental information, the government's review will be based solely on the SF-330 on file and past performance information available to the government. I will say, if you do not plan to put in a TORN response, I ask that you respond to the contract specialist stating your intent. Otherwise, they might think that the email didn't actually get to you or something of that nature. We get all the TORN responses back, and at that point, we convene our board. We select our board members. It's a very short, abbreviated board, and the board ranks the officers based on the exact same criteria on the IDC, and that's directly from FAR 36.602. The first criteria is specialized experience and technical competence. The second criteria, professional qualifications. The third is past performance. The fourth is knowledge of locality, capacity to accomplish the work in the required time. 6, and this is more of a tiebreaker, is equitable distribution of work. For those that, I apologize, that are on the phone and not looking at what we are, I'm on slide 8 right now. I'll try to get better about saying what slide I'm on. So these criteria are ranked in order of importance. The first criteria is most important. The second is second most. And so when looking at ranking firms, if you have an outstanding in A, you're automatically higher than someone who gets an acceptable. All right. So specialized experience, that's the real important one, followed by professional qualifications. 9, once the selection process is approved, a notification of status for torn email is sent to all the firms who provided a response. The email stipulate if the firm was or was not highly rated. And like I said earlier, you can request a debrief at this time. Debriefs will be very brief, anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes. Like I said, we're only discussing what the memorandum says about you, and there's not a lot in the memorandum because it's an abbreviated review. We have had doing this in the past. I acknowledge that. I have provided responses we got to our contracting chiefs, and they have reviewed it. They're currently developing a template for the notification of status form, and they're looking at trying to be better at getting emails out to all the offers and a quicker turnaround time. Slide 10. So the process for us to do this process in 15 days. I'll acknowledge we have not done that yet. It's currently sitting in the 30, 35 day range in total. But this is the goal. It will give us approximately 4 days to develop a pool selection memo and a torn. We've got 7 days situated there, 5 business days for each to develop their torn responses. We move on to 3 days for us to torn board and draft the documents. It gives the board chair a day to review and approve the selection. Then we move to the notification and the debriefs, which is at that point, the torn selection process has stopped and we can move on. Hey, Tanya Sagerman, can you mute your mic? Sure. Thank you. So that will conclude the torn process. At that time, we move into our typical AE process. We're done. And while we're moving on with the process, we'll be working with a document or the most highly qualified to go out with an RFPP. So we've spent a lot of time trying to capture lessons learned and incorporate them to our documents. We've standardized all of our documents. You guys can see those. We provided all 4 of the primary documents, the pool selection, the torn, the board report. I feel like I'm missing one. We've also come up with and located where there are only 2 eligible contracts. Only those 2 contracts will be competed. So for those of you who don't know, we have 2 contracts in Italy to perform general AE design work. Initially, the thought process was we're going to have to find more contracts to compete to get the minimum of 3. But under section 5 of that DPM 2020-02, we're allowed to just compete those 2 firms. It's a grandfather option. So you will see that in the locations where we only have 2 contracts. I will say that we're going to try to maintain the 5 business day turnaround schedule for torn responses. I have received comments that this is too short, but in order to keep the process shorter, we feel that it needs to stay at that, and I will address a little more slides later. Slide 12. Like I mentioned earlier in the very beginning, we took these comments, this feedback very seriously. I tried to address as much as I could in the presentation on the how and the why, but there was a couple extra comments I just kind of wanted to either mention to the community as a whole, so you can see the differences that AEs are looking at it, or just to spend a couple words addressing it. So one comment, the requirement is often vague. Requirements specify exactly what experience, qualifications, and approach they want. We suspect that for recurring requirements, the incumbent likely fully knows the scope and requirement better than the other IDC holders. Similar to that comment, we got one that says you either have or do not have the experience to submit on this torn. I think the second comment speaks truth to that. When we submit these out, we provide enough language so that the firms that know how to do the project and would be considered the most highly qualified will have no issue interpreting what we want and be able to provide a. Next comment, we need to reach out to subcontractors for projects and research our own projects and resumes, hold meetings. And it keeps going on. If a torn is less than 2 weeks, this requires staff to work extremely long hours to put together a proposal. Similar to that, these take significant effort with respect to time put together, responding, another one asking for additional time. And then the opposite of that, more time allowed, more effort will be expended, cost on industry. That is a comment I really agree with, because this isn't the intent of this torn process is not for you guys a lot of time developing. And that's part of the reason why we've kept the response time to 5 days and we are reducing the page count to just 2 pages. This is for you to give a brief description or summary on why you'd be most highly qualified by providing the personnel you would use and the sample experience that relates to the project we are trying to do. We received a comment, assure that not yet been made and that evaluation will be fair and impartial. I will confirm that wholeheartedly. We do not go into this process with someone in mind. This process is specifically developed so that whoever naturally comes out as the most highly qualified via this board is the one that gets the project. If anything, this process makes everything more fair. Received a comment, and I saw this a few times, I only put one in there. Inconsistent requirements from one district to the next. That is an issue. Headquarters just sent this down to everyone and told them the districts can work amongst themselves to figure out the best response and how they want to approach it. I will say I'm working with a couple of other districts. They've asked for our processes, and I've provided our processes. So you might see us slowly get to a very similar approach. I'm hoping that's where it goes. But at this point, you're right, there are inconsistent response requirements. A comment about the torn process seems to be taking longer than was originally expected. And the next comment is similar. Selection notification should be, sorry. So you're right. It's taking a lot longer than we anticipated, than we were shooting for. It's probably double the time than we're shooting for. We're still working out the kinks in this process. We're still developing the process. And as a result, that has taken longer. Like I said earlier, we are shooting and striving to one day meet a 15-day turnaround process for the entire process. And I know contracting is working more on getting notifications out to the AE sooner, and we're working on getting the boards completed sooner and approved. Yes, sorry, next comment was similar. Selection notification should be at least 3 weeks after submission. Some were sent in March, still no notification. And the 2 received said one was most highly qualified. What does that mean? Do all firms get this note? Request debriefs. There's a couple of things in there. I've tried to answer them in the presentation. If you're considered most highly qualified, that means the RFPP will be going to you. It will otherwise say you're highly qualified, but not the most highly qualified. All firms get a note. You should be getting a note. And for the debriefs, if you're not getting a response from the contracting specialist about a debrief, and you feel like it should have been done, go ahead and reach out to myself or reach out to Matt Perrette. Many of you know who that is. He's acting as the team lead. Or you can reach out to Robin Prince, who is taking care of a lot of AE acquisitions, and Chris Brackett. If you reach out to one of us, we should be able to find out where it's at and be able to get a response to. If you reach out to one of us and we don't answer, I apologize. We're very busy at the moment. Reach out to one of the other people and someone will get back to you. We received a bunch of comments with the initial torn to the AE. For example, the type of contract that's being used is placed in the torn. Sometimes IQ number is not listed in the email, most times never listed in the attachment. So we've corrected a lot of stuff with our torn templates, and contracting is currently working on developing templates for the emails that are sent in the very beginning and at the very end, so to ensure that all of the required information is in there. We want it to be consistent, easy for you guys to deal with, and it makes it easier for us. Last, put up here, we've received notices for one, the other, or both contracts we hold 2016, 2019, goes to various people depending on who sends it. So we've received a few comments even outside of this, outside of the solicitation for responses on how we're determining the pool. I briefly touched on that earlier. We have a large planning contract pool that in theory could do general AE design work for across the AOR. That pool though is only used in situations where the requirement cannot be met with our general contracts, right? That is a planning contract pool and is to be used for planning contracts. In the event we try to do work somewhere where we either do not have the capacity to do the work or we do not have a contract in that location, we'll look at utilizing the planning contract. In the case of 26 and 2019 contracts, we're going to utilize the old contract first. You shouldn't have got a notice for both those contracts. If that happens, I would shoot an email back to the contract and hey, what's going on here? Are these different projects? It should only go to one of your contracts. That's something we look at when we're determining the pool selection menu. I believe by mentioning goes to various people depending on who sends it, that's something to the effect of the points of contact we have listed on the SF330. Again, if it's going to an individual that's not listed as the POC on the SF330, let one of us know so that we can get that corrected because it should be going to that individual. For more information, I've provided to Charisse, who emailed out to everyone, the director's policy memorandum, our TORN template, our pool selection template, and our selection now template, which is essentially the basis of the board report. I wanted to be fully transparent on our process and give you guys a glimpse of what we are doing when we're selecting so you have confidence in us. So that's why we've provided those out to you guys. I'll note that these are dated documents. We're currently working to improve and update the processes. So after yesterday, they're outdated, but you guys at least know what we're kind of looking at. Last thing, points of contact. Both John and myself, we have our points of contact here. We're both available to answer any questions you have or concerns. And I encourage you, if you have either, we always appreciate feedback. So true to my word, I finished in about 20 minutes and now is the time for questions.
Hey, Marcus, actually, before you
Yeah.
get started, this is Elliot. I wanted to introduce Colonel Dagan. I think, Dagan, sir, we just kind of missed you when we started.
I was just going
If you would like to address, that'd be good.
Yeah, I was going to say, John, while you take a couple of minutes to go through the chat box and everybody else has a couple of minutes to type some questions in there. I did see that Colonel Dagan has joined. I will unmute him now, but please, ladies and gentlemen, help me in welcoming Colonel Dagan. He's the new district commander. He just got here from Miami, Florida, where he served as the commander engineer for U.S. Southern Command. This isn't his first time to Germany. He was previously stationed in Gießen, and he also commanded the Albuquerque district of the Europe, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. So, Colonel Dagan, would you like to say a few things?
Sure, Charisse, thank you. I do apologize. I was late dialing in. It was completely operator error. I was having technical difficulties with the number, so I apologize. John, Marcus, I was able to listen to probably half your brief. Thank you very much for putting that together and providing that to that team today. And then Lala, thanks for noting that I had dialed in. I didn't know if I came in under code because it looks like we have codes when it comes off the computer rather than our name. So thank you. Very, very honored to be here, and thank you for the invite. I know it was late. Matt Scrivener was running around after change of command yesterday trying to round me up to to see if I could attend, and I do want to, and I appreciate the invite, and I hope to attend the meetings, especially when we're in person, as I'm available and as it makes sense with the schedule. But very happy to be here. As Sharice said, I was in Germany before. It was 21 years ago, and very fond memories. But this time I'm coming back with a family, my wife of 14 years and a 9-year-old son. So it's going to be a much different flavor of tour, both professionally and personally. But we're really looking forward to this opportunity. And again, thanks for the opportunity to share this afternoon. Sharice, I think you captured everything else. I am not a stranger to USACE, but I always have a lot to learn when it comes to our processes and the way USACE does business. So no stranger to USACE, just excited to be here, and thanks again for the invite.
Well, thank you very much, sir, and welcome back to Europe. We look forward to welcoming you to one of our meetings soon. One question that was asked, I will address, John. Somebody asked if this session was being recorded and if that would be available later. We are recording it, but the government reserves the right to determine if it will be posted. So please check back at the end of the week or early next week. And if we post the recording, it will be on the, or likely on the SAME website. So I guess Margaret or John.
I think we'll pass it to John Benson now for the question and answer session. John?
Okay, very good. Commander, I'm glad you could join us, and everyone in the audience. I'm really thrilled that we have the chance to have this session. So good presentation, Marcus. I think we got a lot of points across. So there has been a little bit of chat going on, and I've been trying to keep track of the questions, and I think that we'll probably just start from the bottom up, and see if we can't answer as we go. And I encourage some discussion and back and forth. I just want to keep aware of the time constraint that we're under, and try and make this a productive exchange. So so going up, it looks like there's one question about from Forpu Njekam. Pardon my pronunciation if I didn't pronounce that right. Does this constitute an addition to the time previously required to award a task order? As a customer, we usually have issues with the alacrity when task orders are concerned, and I'm wondering if we ought to revise our expectations now that the TORN is in effect. Please advise. So
the 15-day does add to what we previously anticipated for how long it would take our section to award something. There are some areas where we can not duplicate work, but work tasks in tandem. But for the most part, we have to have this selection process done before we can, for example, develop an IGE or the rest of the documents. One thing that can be in tandem is development of scope of work. And that's why you saw that we were using a draft scope of work to develop the TORN process, so that the TORN or the scope of work could be finalized when we were sending out this TORN over.
Yeah. Good. Thank you, Marcus. I think I might be able to address this next question. The question is, if the process is taking over 30 days versus the planned 15, where in the process is the delay? And it's really nothing that we can look to the AE community or SAME to address the delay. A lot of it is clarity in the direction and the process internally that we take as we coordinate among 3 or 4 different divisions in the Europe district. That includes engineering, project management, contracting, and office of counsel. So it's one of the negative impacts, I guess, of a transition. And I assure you that processes are getting streamlined. The understanding of processes is getting widely disseminated, and we're having the right conversations to cut these numbers down. Believe me, we want to cut down as well. This is not good for anyone. So again, it's our internal processes that we are improving. Let's see. The next question going up, if a firm is still considered by their SF330, even if they don't submit a TORN response, why don't all eligible firms receive a notification of selection since they are all being considered?
So the only ones that are being considered are the ones that were determined by the AE selection pool memo. So we send out these notifications to all of them, that all the firms that were determined by the pool selection memo to be eligible. Those firms have the choice to either respond with supplemental information or not respond with supplemental information. A firm isn't purely considered by their SF330. They're only considered by their SF330 if they were in the pool selection memo, sent a TORN request, and responded back that they did not want to submit a request.
So, Mark,
Exactly.
that was my question, actually. I think to clarify, I meant if they're in the pool and so they receive the TORN but choose not to provide extra information, wouldn't they they're still being considered, so shouldn't they get that notification of the results? Of whether
they will get that result, the notification.
Okay.
Yes. All being considered should be notified of the results of that evaluation. Let's see, from Mr. Tim Conley, the next question is, during the debrief, will USACE let us know the determination made on equitable distribution of work?
No.
Well,
we could tell you
reluctant to do that.
Yeah. Right, we can only, in a debrief, we can only discuss the stuff pertinent to your firm. So discuss distribution of work, we can just tell you, hey, you've been awarded $2.2 million. It's not going to help you at all.
No, but Marcus and John, so this is Tim. It doesn't impact us because we're not chosen, right? So there's a tremendous impact on our company if we're not chosen for a task order, and if we're not told that equitable adjustment played a role or not, then during the whole point of a debrief is for us to gain information how we can improve our TORN responses. And if we're not told that we're chosen because of equitable adjustment, then we know, okay, our TORN response was okay, but we were, not chosen. So during the debriefs that we had, no comment was given on equitable adjustment.
No comment was?
No comment at all. I was told you cannot give information on that criteria.
So like Marcus said, we have to focus on your response, your proposal, right? Or in this case, a response to the TORN. And if we can talk about how much distribution, how many task orders and the value of those task orders that we're tracking are against your contract, but we're not in a position to be comparatively talking about other contracts versus what their distriction is.
I understand that, John.
And we should be able to address it for your contract. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it would be, I don't think well, at least I don't need details on it. I would just like to know if it was used or not. That was my only point.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I was told I cannot be told that information. So it would be helpful to know if you do use that criteria to make a determination, because then I know, I can change or not change how I'm doing my TORNs.
Mm-hmm. We can definitely let you know if that was considered. It is lower in the criteria, so it's going to be weighted less. So if you rarely would we think we have to go to that criteria.
That's purely a tiebreaker criteria, right? That's criteria number 6. I have yet to see that criteria enacted, award or achieve between two.
Right.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Let's see. There's a comment about TORNs do not include a summary of the scope of work. That's a description of the scope is the goal. I'm sorry, Marcus, go ahead.
I was going to say, yeah, that's similar to what you said. That's correct. We don't provide a summary of scope of work. We provide more of a 1-paragraph description is what our goal is, to allow you to kind of focus in and narrow down on the type of MILCON work or the type of planning effort that we're looking at. If we give full draft scopes of work, that'd probably be counterproductive, because you guys would likely spend a lot more time reviewing it and trying to craft the perfect response.
And as Marcus said, to consolidate the process, we'd like to initiate the TORN maybe without a fully developed scope of work. So once we have a pretty certain idea on what we're looking for and have enough information to accurately describe it so we can develop the right kind of criteria and ask the right kind of questions, we'd like to move out with it. So the scope definitely won't be completed, draft at best, probably at the TORN point.
Hey,
John Benson, Jill Tefts here. Just want one point of clarification. For environmental projects, we may well be using a full scope, just because it saves us time. We have to have the draft scope ready early anyway. And rather than taking the time to consolidate it down, our plan to save time was to possibly use the full scope.
Okay.
Unless you guys tell us that's not, this way we don't rewrite it and try to consolidate it and pull bits and pieces out. A lot of our environmental scopes include lots of pieces, and to try to put that down into an abstract, it's challenging.
Can get, okay.
Hey,
Okay.
hey, John, this is Lalit. The questions I've had for the last few months was, I think you said it correctly, but I just want the audience to know the tone short description that you're looking for. The question they were asking is that how do they know, what kind of experience you're looking for? So I'm just preaching the choir here. We got to make a relevant description on the 2-page document to make sure that people understand fully. Sometimes they are not able to determine, are you looking for a heavy duty electrical? Are you looking for civil? That's the question I've been asked. Or what are we doing out there? So I would say a relevant description of the services needed should be emphasized in there. If we're not doing a full-blown scope of work, we should at least emphasize that. I'm just reading you some questions that I've been noting for the last couple of months. Over.
Okay, well, I appreciate that. And I think to extend on that, we also have a chance to drill down on points of emphasis in our interview questions. So, maybe between the title and the description, we could even be more specific in the question, saying, tell us your experience with this discipline or this facility or something. So be on the lookout for that too.
Yeah. Hey, there was one question on there at the bottom there, John. Somebody saying that, please send your email addresses. Lindy's doing that, saying that, you and Marcus on your last slide.
Yes.
You have everything else there. Put your email address.
Right. We can make that available.
Yeah, post that and send to Cherie before she posts it on the website. Over. Thanks.
Okay. Let's see. An overview of, can we provide the next question is, can we provide an overview of anticipated projects so that we can expedite our own TORN processes? And, well, Marcus.
Yeah, I ran through our project list. My best guess for year end, well, and to be conducted in the next month or two is anywhere between 10 and I don't have a really good grasp of how many it's going to be, especially as projects are added to our list and projects are delayed.
Oh my God.
But I think though, because this is a key here, we're doing that for the construction mate talks. John, we need to talk internally here because this is the first time we're doing it for this fiscal year end and everything else. It's always good to let the industry, our partners, know what's upcoming. We, as best as possible, and everybody I can tell you on this phone call, on this dial-in, knows how erratic the government is and when we get money or don't get money, including our stakeholders. So let's get together and see with contracting, how we publish it so that people are aware what's coming out there. And we came up with a system last year and the year before for construction contracts, by the way, because we asked for them to give us a quick turnaround as well. So let's think about it, Marcus and John, okay? This is
I'll let Jill Teff's here. I had an initiative that I haven't completed yet, but we did get permission through the district that we could use our pulse data excerpt from that, which lists all of our planned procurements, and that we could provide that on our external website. I just haven't gotten that together with which data would we pull and get somebody to make that visible. So it's another idea at some point in the future we can, if we can make that happen.
Absolutely. So, John is doing it for the first time because every year they make it happen the last 2 weeks of the year too. For construction mate talks and for jobs, we did that. We did that with our contractors. I don't see why we can't do it. We just got to get it, our council and contracting to team up there. But I think Marcus and John, we do need to do it. Somehow we can project it, whatever we can project without being within legal and contractually possible. We got to do it. We got to do it. This is one thing we owe everybody because we can't expect people to turn around in 5 days and make things happen. So I think, John, we can make it happen. Right. Just let's talk to legal and contracting, do what Jill is talking about. Over.
I would just want to add to that, just to set an expectation about the kind of what you alluded to already, Lalit, of the dynamic, variability that we could. Yeah. We could Absolutely. Set out a list and it could change substantially the next week. Yep. And then the second thing is just the amount of information we could provide, because if we're sending out these lists and AEs are really trying to prepare, I think they can only pre-position themselves so much before they have to start asking us questions and digging in. And I'm not positive that we could respond that way.
So let's look at it. Let's look at it together. Yeah. I think let's look at it together. For example, for Milcons, these are done deals. So whatever we can do, sharing the information wise, I think we're saying the same thing. Let's explore.
I do too.
Over.
Okay. Agree. Let's see. The next question for Marcus: are TORNs requested from all contract holders, or are certain contract holders selected based on SF330s?
So I'll go back to that slide. The pool selection memo looks at what the project is going to be and what type of project it is. So for the contract holders in our district, you'll notice that you either have a general AEIDC contract or a general design contract. You might have a planning contract, or you could have a geotech contract. So the selection memo will look at that, determine all firms that are available for that specific and the contracts that have the AOR as part of the work that's going to be done. So if you're doing a general design and we're going to pull all the general design contracts that have the AOR underneath, and that will make the basis of the pool selection memo.
There's no way you have enough time for that.
Pardon me?
Sorry?
I'm guessing that was Zandra, but I didn't understand it. So you want to repeat?
I heard there's no way we have time for that. we've been doing it. It's not as complicated as it sounds because all of our systems are pools in different AORs and pools of different types. Like I mentioned, we have a pool of 9 contractors for planning. We have a pool of 6 contractors for doing general aid design in Germany and Poland and Czech Republic, Belgium, and Netherlands. And so you're able to go and grab that pool and then evaluate that pool from there on the 3 criteria that we can remove them for, or that the 3 criteria that would remove them from eligibility.
To elaborate, I mean, we are using this, this has to be done because we have to define who we're going to reach out to, and just ways to stay consistent with our acquisition policy and to streamline our acquisition strategy for each contract and to streamline the process. You know, why go to 9 different AEs if we can meet the need with our current capacity from some older contracts and still meet the 3 the competition for 3 minimum. So what this really does, what we've explained to you, is really a lot of just a formalization of what we did internally, but usually just with 1 or 2 people. And you know, you have to figure out a starting point, and that's what the pool selection does. The last question I'd like to get to before well, maybe the second to last question. Requesting an expedited turnaround time for some torn decisions. Some instances, you know, waiting weeks, even a month without word about the torn selection. That was touched on in Marcus's presentation, where we are increasing our coordination internally so we can get that turned around. And I know that contracting specialists are developing some standardized processes to be that once they get the information from us internally, where we're better coordinated and can respond faster. Let's see. And then I noticed, maybe this is the last question from Bob Kaiser. It says, Army General Counsel opined earlier this month that the torn process was not a legal requirement, but could be done as an option. And an executive order was issued on 4 June that all agencies should expedite infrastructure projects to revive the economy. Given that, any talk of removing this process, particularly with the year end coming?
It'd be great.
So,
I have not heard that, John.
Yeah, that's no. We haven't heard anything like that either.
But John, let's follow through so that we are not the only ones in the dark there. In case Bob Kaiser has a point there, just it's very simple to find out. Just talk to Jay, and he can reach
Jay
out to
Aldridge.
yeah, exactly. We should get that answer. I mean, that's a good question. We should make sure. I remember asking somebody, John, I forgot to mention to you. I apologize. Somebody did bring it to my attention, but I forgot to ask you. But ask Jay, and then let's go back to everybody, you know, in case there are people are speculating, because that's a major comment here. So let's talk to Jay. Thanks.
Definitely. Looks like there is one other question about should CPARs be included in the 2-page response?
You could
answer them.
very well list them, but we on our side contracting pulls CPARs for it to be included in the inclusion under factor 3.
Right. So we do have access to presumably the same information you do, and we do look at past performance through CPARs. And you know, if I were submitting a limit 2-page response to a torn, I'd be very judicious about including any of that, if at all. So, well, I think we've covered all of the questions. There's a question about the meeting being recorded that was addressed, and then we will we'll update these slides with email addresses for contacts. I think a lot of you probably already have our email contact information, but we will update that. But barring any other questions, I think we're done.
John, this is Margaret. So I think we got about 1 or 2 more minutes. If you're willing, would you consider sharing with us just kind of your impression about the process? I mean, is it something that's providing the government useful information that helps in the selection process?
It is. I think that the process, the effort, and the extra labor, that's definitely the downside. But a really strong side of it is just the pertinent information that is brought to us directly to consider for that particular task order. So my overall impression is that there is a real benefit to the cost of this effort, and to have to give the AEs a chance to point out specific relevant work, I think it's going to help our customers, and it's going to help just the government in general, so that we do find indeed the most qualified and find that best match to meet our need.
Great. Well, thank you so much for sharing that insight. And John, I want to thank you so much on behalf of all the Rhein-Main Post members, and I think we probably even had some others join us today. But I think this was an extremely invaluable session for us. I mean, obviously this new process is new, and everyone's learning on both sides. This is a team effort, and it is something that I know the district and the AE community is spending quite a lot of time on. So by collaborating this morning, sharing information in both directions, I know we're going to make the process better. So again, I mean, thanks for making yourself and your staff available, and being open to addressing all the questions from our audience. And Marcus, that was a great presentation that got a lot of questions answered right up front, very clear. And we just truly appreciate the time you spent and the time you're going to spend moving forward to make this a better process. With that, I thank all of our audience for joining us today. This was, it wouldn't be a good session without you and your inputs and questions. And I hope that you've gotten a lot out of this session. And I hope that you'll consider joining us for our next program, which will be on the 16th of July, where we'll have an AE firm presenting on some really great lessons learned on how to fast track a really hot project to build a permanent COVID-19 facility here in the States. So with that, again, I wish everybody the best for the rest of the day, and thank you for joining the SAME Rhein-Main Post. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Hope to see you either virtually or in person soon.
Thank you.